Hi everybody, welcome back to Interactive Media. Today we will be talking about design sprints and their role in the product development process and in your design process as well. So let's go ahead and switch over and get started. Okay, so design sprints have been popularized in the past few years thanks to a book that has come out called Sprint, and it is by Jack Knapp. And he was the person who helped popularize design sprints because he was one of the first people to actually articulate down on paper and eventually published a book on essentially what a design sprint was. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of this this kind of buzzword that's going around. Design sprints actually have been around for a while. It isn't exactly completely new, but it's been popularized by this book because it's a process that has been used to develop some really big things at Google. So design sprints are the more traditional format is a 5-day sprint, and it generally takes 40 hours of time. So usually it's a work week, 9 to 5 every day, no cell phones, just everyone kind of heads down in this design sprint. So the kind of this design specific event. And it's the way for small teams, these really tightly coupled teams between product and design and marketing and engineering, to answer these really big critical questions on what we want to build, why we want to build it, what is our big hypotheses, and we build it and then we launch it essentially within 5 days. So it seems really fast because it is, and it's meant to keep people on their toes. And we do this through a number of different exercises. We also build out some designs, so we prototype them, so actually make them clickable, and then we put them in front of people to get feedback for it. And yes, all of this is still done in 5 days. So at companies like Google or Amazon, they are traditionally led by designers, since designers are tasked with really understanding problems and working from customer problems and then working backwards from there to solve those problems. And because of that, that's why I think you as designers are in a really unique spot, and it's really, really important for you to become fluent in being part of a design sprint and also hosting a design sprint, so that you can actually help other people, march closer towards the right way to solve a problem. So let's take a look at this design sprint process. It tends to be 5 days long, and that's why you see 5 titles here. So there's understand, sketch, decide, prototype, and validate. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about what all of these different things mean. So generally in your first day of your design sprint, you kick it off by understanding more about the different problems that exist in this specific space, what you want to solve, why you want to solve it. And we go through a series of exercises to uncover that information and essentially to build some sort of consensus on the specific focus of your design sprint. If you're lucky, before you even kick off a design sprint, that particular problem, like this big idea, has been somewhat defined, and we use the design sprint to essentially build a hypothesis for that problem. However, the simple answer is for the first day is really the understanding phase. So it's about understanding the market space, understanding what's been done, what can be done better. The second day is all about sketching and brainstorming and kind of focusing on this a wide variety of ways that a particular problem can be solved. And we do that through visual means. And we also write things out as well. And that's where we start kind of diverging from all the things we understand, and we want to create a ton of different ideas. Then on day 3, which we call decide, this is where you start converging your information, your thinking. So now you're starting to narrow down from the set of sketches what's feasible, what will work well, what's easy to build, the history of adoption for this type of product or interaction, etc. So we see that from understanding, there's a huge base of information. We start diverging from those ideas through our sketches, and then we converge them back again when we decide as a team how to move forward. From there, we then move into the prototyping phase, meaning you design it, You build it, you make it clickable so that you can put it in front of people. And generally at that same time, you'll start writing out a user test, a way for you to better understand how someone uses the product. And that's where we start getting divergent again in building the prototype. So these tasks are generally distributed across multiple designers and engineers as well. And then when it comes to the last day on Friday, you start converging your designs again, and you start converging on answers to these big questions that you started defining all the way in day one, understand. So let's go ahead and dive in to the main reason why you're here today with me, and that's really to go through a design prompt and to start understanding that problem space. So the challenge for you as a designer in the Sprint Challenge is to design for hungry people. And I know it's very ambiguous, but there's a very specific scenario that I want to put in front of you today. So when people are incredibly hungry, they become hangry, which is both hungry and angry. And that is a very difficult emotion or state of being to deal with, especially for a retailer or a company like Domino's, for example. So they sell this wide variety of delicious goods. They sell pizzas, breadsticks, cheesy bread, bread bites, bread twists. There's a lot of bread here, I'm starting to notice. They have salads and pastas and baked dishes as well, and a couple of other things. But what's interesting about Domino's is that they consider themselves to be a technology company where their only product that they sell are pizzas. That's a fun fact. But to relate this back to our Sprint Challenge, what I want you to do is to imagine that you are part of the design team for Domino's. So you are in, I think they're in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But imagine that you are there and you are part of the you're part of the Domino's design team, and you want to help families and groups of people answer what's for dinner long before they actually get to that hangry stage. So anytime before they start getting angry and fussy and tired and just willing to eat anything, we want people to find a way to essentially answer what's for dinner, but in a group scenario, and to do it in a very controlled way, and then for them to actually buy something on Domino's. So that's our goal. So some of your product requirements for this project include the actual form that it takes needs to be a digital app or a website. So it needs to actually be an interface that we can build and test for the purposes of this class. Additionally, you must be able to ultimately order dinner for the family or group from Domino's Pizza, meaning that you can't design for Pizza Hut, for Costco Pizza, or Cosmos, or Big Daddy Pizzas. It has to be specifically for Domino's, the corporation. So there's a very specific look and feel of it. They have very specific types of language and the way that they address their customers. So that's something you'll need to build in realistically into your product. And then upon completion of this design sprint and all of the activities, you will submit what we call a case study of your work. And I will get into that in a little bit more detail in another video so that you understand exactly the type of information I am looking for in that deliverable. So first things first, you will need to appoint a group leader, meaning that this person is going to serve as your decision maker. They are going to be your facilitator for all of these activities. They are going to manage the project, making sure that everyone meets their deadlines and submits information on a timely manner. And they will also be the tiebreaker, meaning that if there's ever some sort of impasse in the group in terms of what direction to go with the design or who's going to do what and when things are due, this person will ultimately make that call. So I want to set a couple of qualifications for who is that manager essentially for this project, or who's the leader. So they should be appointed based on previous domain knowledge. So meaning, and I would actually take this in order. So if this person has worked at Domino's Pizza before, either franchise or corporate, then they should absolutely be the person in charge. The next person would be that they have worked in a pizzeria. So maybe they've been at a pizza shop that is a competitor of Domino's. The next step down, I would say a person that's qualified to be a leader in this project would be someone who's worked in the food service industry before. So they know a thing or two about fulfilling orders and inventory management, working with customers, working with ingredients, etc. The next step down would be someone who's worked in retail. So someone in a customer-facing environment where they've had to deal with customer service. Maybe they've been cashiering, or they're actually a retailer who's buying and selling goods. Then the last person, who I'd say is probably the most qualified to lead this project, is someone who's a pizza connoisseur, or someone who eats a lot of pizza. A whole lot of pizza. Maybe they bought the most amount of pizza in your group than anyone else in the last month. So someone like that would be me, even though I'm the teacher. I eat a lot of pizza, and I do eat a lot of Domino's, and that's why I am so knowledgeable of their company. So one of the first activities that we want to conduct in this design sprint is doing a series of questions called How Might We? And what you do is you format the ideas that you probably are already spinning in your head, but you actually rewrite them as questions, because that will help you kind of open up your mind and recontextualize how you want to approach that problem versus jumping right into one particular solution that might not be the right one. So I would suggest getting together in your groups. You can do this in person like we're doing in class, or you can do it online through a group discussion board. But what I would do is start writing down your ideas and these how might we questions on post-it notes or in your discussion post. And this particular note-taking method is called How Might We's, which is very fitting for this section. But essentially, as someone is presenting research, or as you're doing background research, or you're reading articles, or you're talking to people, anytime you come up with an idea, write it out as a how might we. So when we break down how might we statements, the how assumes that opportunities would exist in this particular field. Might, that phrase, says that we don't have to find something right now, but this is a problem to consider. And then we is about doing everything, all of this work all together and being collaborative about it. So I would suggest, if you are doing this exercise in person, that you use the 3x3 sticky notes and you use a Sharpie marker, and only write one idea per sticky note. So don't try to cram in an entire design hypotheses and sketches into one sticky note. Just stick to the question phrased, how might we, and focus on this sense of idea generation. So we're not solving a problem, we're only identifying a problem and trying to reframe it in a way that helps seed some ideas for your design project later on. So we don't want to go too broad, we don't want to go too narrow. And the key is, later on in this exercise, other people are going to vote on these ideas. So if you don't write it down on a sticky note, we can't vote on it. So that's the most important thing. So some examples of how might we statements, what's too broad, too narrow, and kind of just right. An example of something being too broad would be, how might we make people happy? That's a big one. I mean, happiness comes from a lot of different things, not just pizza. Although for me, there is a very high correlation between happiness and the amount of pizza in front of me. So, and then something that's an example of something too narrow would be, how might we make the button blue? So here you'll see that we've actually jumped right into execution and design versus trying to identify a problem that is worth solving. An example, a good one for how might we statements would be, how might we use location to show relevant results? So how might we show the location of current Domino's locations and stores and hotspots so that our customers can order pizza and receive it in a timely manner? So something like that would be an example of an acceptable how might we. It's got a lot of words, but I'm sure you could pare it down a little bit. So at this point in your design sprint day, you'll want to kick off a group discussion by starting the background reading. So you should have actually received a set of links already for you to better understand kind of the Domino's technology portion of this project. Again, like I had mentioned earlier, Domino's considers themselves a technology company where they're actually selling pizzas, which is a really fascinating way to think about your company. I mean, most pizza companies think I just sell pizza and pizza is my main product. But when you kind of take that different twist on it, it starts getting you thinking about all the different ways we can get pizza in front of someone. And that's a much bigger problem, and I think more interesting problem than just the food itself, because usually that requires a different team of people. And I would love to be on that team. So let's look at the readings that you have, and why don't you go ahead and conduct your own background research when it comes to Domino's and people needing to order things in a group setting, and the way that people just the way that maybe people have enjoyed Domino's, or just its evolution of its brand over time. And what we want to do is focus on how might we notes. So as you are discussing this as a group, or as you're going through this information, anytime you have an idea, rewrite as a how might we. And let's see what you come up with. So when we come back together, let's actually talk about all the things we learned about Domino's and the pizza industry in general, and the use of technology when it comes to group ordering and the way that people solve for this hungry time in their lives. So let's actually format this in a way that will help you make sense of the problem space so that you can move on to your sketch phase pretty quickly. So let's discuss the following. So number one, let's look at the project vision and the business goals of Domino's as a technology company. And then the second thing I want you to discuss is the business opportunities that you see, or business opportunities that Domino's has identified as, different avenues that they're looking to expand upon. And then the third thing I want you to focus on are, who are the customers? Who does Domino's target? So it's very easy to say everyone, but I'd say that they're a little bit more specific in the way that they word things, or the way that it's visualized in their app or on their website, and just the way that they approach the product development and the product marketing. So identify who the specific customers are. From there, I want you to show us the end-to-end customer experience. So go ahead and take one scenario that you think will be helpful for this exercise. Again, our exercise design sprint is about group ordering, but you can use any other kind of end-to-end browse to buy experience that you want to examine on Domino's. From there, it'd be great to see a couple screenshots of kind of key screens for the Domino's app or the Domino's website in terms of what the product looks like today. So the brand has definitely evolved over time, and we want a snapshot in time, specifically now, so that you can take that information and improve it. I'd also want you to do some competitive research as well, and for you to identify things that are similar and that are different than Domino's, and things that you can improve upon your competitor's experience to help improve Domino's. From there, the very last thing is, I want you to provide information on the technology that Domino's currently employs, and what are some things we need to consider in terms of privacy or security, feasibility, how well it solves a particular problem, and also the opportunities. So are there other ways that we can incorporate other technologies that we haven't considered yet, or that Domino's rather hasn't considered yet? So now that we've shared all of that information, I want to move us into an empathy building exercise, meaning that I want you to go through a scenario that puts you in the right frame of mind for you to solve a problem like this. So in order to help build empathy, the best way to do this is actually to conduct a series of open-ended interviews and to talk to people. And in this case, we're talking about pizza, and I'd say most people that you know, probably, right around you, they have eaten pizza before, or they've ordered it, or they've smelled it from afar. But what we want to do is kind of spend some time walking a mile in someone else's shoes. We certainly have our own perspectives of what it's like to order pizza, or what it's like to order food when you're very hangry, or try to get to some decision with a group of people when everyone's hungry and cranky. But in order to better understand how other people interpret this information and their perspectives, we need to talk to them, but more likely, we actually need to listen to them. So there's two ways that you can do this. The two ways that I like to approach these open-ended conversation is first, you ask them about a past experience. So something that they remember, not something that they have to speculate. So something about, tell me about a time when you last ordered the most amazing pizza ever, or well, that's a little too leading. So maybe tell me about a time when you ordered pizza and it showed up terribly. It didn't show up with the right toppings, or it showed up late. Tell me about a time when you had a bad experience ordering pizza. You can do that and ask a series of follow-up questions that help them open up. Ask them why, for example. Ask them to tell you more about their experiences. Or you can actually have them complete a pizza type task while thinking out loud. So for instance, you can say, here is the Pizza Hut app. I would like you to place an order for 25 people so that the food will arrive in the next hour. And then see how they actually do it. See how that type of task can be accomplished through the competitor app. But essentially, so there's two different ways that I conduct these empathy exercises. I either go out and interview people and ask them a series of open-ended questions, or actually have them do a cognitive walkthrough or kind of a usability test of a competitor's app. And both of these scenarios allow me and will allow you to hear directly from people the types of problems that they faced, what they really liked, what they didn't like, and what can be improved. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to uncover. We never want these people that we're interviewing to actually solve the problem for us. After all, that's our job as designers. So in our interviews or our cognitive walkthrough or task analysis, here are some examples of what you can do to facilitate that session. So for the first one, the task analysis, essentially this is where you give them a prompt or a scenario and then they walk through it while thinking out loud. What you first have to do for this type of research is to choose one critical task of your product. So one thing that your product has to do, amazingly well. So in this case might be they have to order pizza, or they need to make a payment, or they need to understand all the different types of pizza that they can order. So choose one task that you think is the most important. And then from there, you will then provide your participant with that task and record all of your observations. So you'll be taking photos or videos, you might be taking notes. Maybe you have someone else who's observing the session and taking notes for you. Whichever way you do it, you have to record the information. It's very difficult to talk to like 20 different people and then to be able to remember everything and keep it in your head. So make sure you record it, video, audio, or have someone else take notes for you. And we want that person to complete the task unassisted. So we never want to jump in and be like, oh, like there's the button that you were supposed to tap that you couldn't find. So we want to kind of see them struggle as much as possible, which sounds kind of bad, but it gives you a lot of information. And only when they get stuck and only when you can't move forward with your research is when you may want to intervene. But otherwise, it's great to continue asking about, what were their expectations, what were they looking for, and how they could have moved to the next step if the interface was laid out in the right way. From there, you'll then analyze your information and then bring your observations back to your group and share out that information so that other people can come up with their how might we statements. In your customer interview, again, I had mentioned about kind of this sense of open-ended conversation. So we don't need to structure a lot of questions going in, although some people just feel a lot more comfortable doing it. I think not having it actually helps you kind of open up a little bit, and it gives you a lot of good exercise in terms of being able to think on your feet. So make sure when you ask them to recall an experience, give them some sort of anchor point in time. So you can ask for the most recent time, or even kind of hyperbolically like weighing it on kind of good or bad experiences. So the most recent time, their worst time, or their best time ordering pizza. see what you come up with. A couple of follow-up open-ended questions would be, why do you think you felt that way? What did you like most about it? And can you tell me more? So those are kind of my 3 go-to questions. All right, so now that you've conducted your task analyses and your customer interviews, now I want you to prepare for our next session, and it's going to be a busy one. So sometimes the best ideas are the ones that already exist, but they just need to be improved upon. And designers actually do this quite a bit. It's not so much about the first person who makes the iPhone, it's more about the person or the company that makes the best smartphone. That would be an example of that mentality. So what we want to do is actually have other people in your team start researching essentially the background of this problem. So whether or not they research Domino's or other competitor websites, or pizza industry in general, or nutrition, just things that are tangentially related or directly related will be very helpful for this session. So we want to look at other industries or fields that solve this particular problem of group ordering and helping people order before they get angry. We want, after we've done all of our research, we'll come back and have 3-minute presentations where everyone gives a quick summary of what they learned. And then make sure you also have a copy of the app on your phone that you can show, or you can use your phone to record a video and upload it if you were doing this remotely. So that concludes our first day of the design sprint. This is a condensed version of an 8-hour version for this day. So I hope these exercises will be helpful in helping you move forward with a really amazing design idea.